إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. أما بعد, dear brothers and sisters, we begin by praising Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We send peace and blessings upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his companions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us from those who follow in their footsteps, in their teachings and their practices. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. When you look at our deen can be broken down into two parts. And the reason why I say two parts is as soon as you open the Quran and you begin reciting Surah Al-Baqarah, you have Surah Al-Fatiha, which is called the Al-Kitab. In other words, the essence or the mother of the entire Quran. In other words, it's the essence, the crux, the gist of the Quran. In that in Surah Al-Fatiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about various things. But you move on to the next surah, which is Surah Al-Baqarah, and right from the start, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to speak about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What it means to be a Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right from the beginning, says, who are the believers? That the Quran is hudan lil muttaqin. The Quran is a guidance for the people who have taqwa, who are conscious and aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a description for the people who are people of taqwa, the muttaqun, the people of taqwa. They are alladhina yu'minuna bil ghayb. The first thing, the first part of our deen, which is they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, they are committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first part of our deen. We mentioned that the deen can be broken down to two parts. The first part is our commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that is the definition of a person with taqwa. And a person of taqwa is the person who's going to benefit from the Quran in its entirety. So the first part is الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. That they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they believe in the unseen. وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. And they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They establish their salah, which is worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, the first part of our deen, as we mentioned, is our commitment, our relationship, and our devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second part of our deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He mentions in the same ayah, continuing forward, وَمِمَّا رَزَقَنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. This is really the third ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah. وَمِمَّا رَزَقَنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And from what we have given them, from what we have provided them, they spend. So the second part of our deen is our commitment in helping the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our deen is of two parts. First is our commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second is our commitment to helping the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what our deen boils down to. You see, as today we're going to be speaking about the topic of zakat. At the end of the day, the purpose of zakat is really, as is mentioned in the Quran, to purify our wealth. But the secondary purpose and the primary objective of zakat is to assist the people who are less fortunate. Right? And there's a way of understanding this, and inshallah we'll get to it. But the first thing that I really wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and hopefully everyone understood, that our deen is two parts. And I'll say it again. Our commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and second, our commitment to helping the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not just mentioned in this one ayah. You read the Quran, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about establishing salah, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about our commitment, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will immediately follow it up By saying, وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةِ, and they give the zakah. In other words, they give the zakah to assist the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a constant theme throughout the Quran. You look into the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you'll see the very same thing. That you assist people, Allah will assist you. You have mercy on people, Allah will have mercy on you. You hide the faults and the sins of other people, Allah will protect you from your shortcomings. It's a constant theme within our deen. That our deen is more than just our relationship, our commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our deen extends beyond that to the creation of Allah, whereby it's our responsibility as Muslims to assist the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what it boils down to. In today's khutbah, we're going to be focusing on zakat. As we know that zakat is one of the pillars of our deen. And considering that it's one of the pillars of our deen, we understand that it's one of the most important things of our deen. Right? You have salah as one of the pillars of our deen, and likewise you have zakat as one of the pillars of our deen. Allah mentions this over and over again in the Quran, the concept of zakat. What exactly is zakat? So today, inshallah, we'll be getting into it. And in the past, we spoke about zakat, but we spoke about it very briefly and very concisely. It was very brief, very straightforward, not much detail. However, in today's khutbah, inshallah, we'd like to go into a bit more detail so that we can shed some more light and it can be beneficial to everyone. And we're hoping that this will actually be a two-part khutbah. So today we'll be focusing on some aspects of zakat, and I don't think we'll have enough time to really finish off everything. And we will require next week to finish off zakat. Because the only time many of us are really focused or concerned about zakat is during the month of Ramadan. Outside of the month of Ramadan, not many of us really give our zakat. And that's another thing that inshallah we'll speak about. So because this is really the only occasion where we take the time to speak about zakat, I think it's important that we give a due diligence and we give it sufficient time to learn exactly what zakat is and just learning the basic rulings and legal positions as far as the zakat is concerned. Now, as we mentioned, that zakat is a fundamental aspect of our deen. It's one of the 5 pillars of our deen. And whenever salah is mentioned in the Quran, you'll see that right after it, or sometime along that, sometime right after it, you'll see that zakat is also mentioned. Giving is a part of our deen. It's mandatory. You can't sidestep it. You can't go past it. Now getting into the purpose of zakat, right? We know that the purpose of salah is, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Taha, أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِ, that establish salah for my remembrance, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, establish the salah. Why? Because the purpose of salah is to constantly connect back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to constantly be in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the purpose of salah. And then outside of that, you have many other benefits, many other wisdoms behind salah, that if a person is punctual in their salah, then hopefully they'll be punctual in other aspects of their lives. That if a person is sincere in their salah, then they'll develop that sincerity outside of salah. Right? There's other benefits, but the sole purpose, as Allah mentions, the reason behind salah is أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِ, for my remembrance, for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look at zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ, that take from their wealth, meaning take that allocated amount, that stipulated amount of zakat from their wealth, sadaqatan, as a form of charity, right? So you're taking this wealth from the wealth of the Muslims, not for yourself. So this command, this ayah, is a command to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Allah is commanding Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that take from the wealth of the believers, not for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's leisure or pleasure, rather sadaqatan, for the purpose of giving charity, for the purpose of giving to people who need it, the less fortunate. Therefore, take from the wealth of the Muslims, تُطَهِّرُهُمْ. So that's the first. That's the first purpose of zakat, sadaqatan, as a way of assisting people, as a way of giving charity and aiding those who are less fortunate. The second purpose of zakat, as Allah mentions in the Quran, تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ, so that they may be purified, they may be cleansed. تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا, so that they may be purified and they may be cleansed through their zakat. What does this mean? So there's a few things that the scholars of tafsir, they mention. Number one is that when a person is giving the zakat, what they are doing is they are purifying their wealth. The portion they are removing from their entire wealth, that amount of zakat is considered the dirty money, so to say, right? And it's not to say that, we're giving people dirty money. That's not what it means. It means that what we are removing is now a purification for the entirety of our wealth. So that's the first meaning behind this. That when a person gives zakat, they are now paying their dues. Now they are purifying their wealth. The second meaning of zakat means, the second meaning behind this ayah is that when a person gives zakat, then they are purifying their soul, right? And the way that works is, nobody really likes to give away their money. It's their hard-earned money. Who wants to give it away? But when a person gives their money, when a person does this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and remember, zakat is not something where you give to someone and say, I'm giving you zakat, you better do me a favor. Zakat is where you give someone, and that's it. You're giving it because it's their right. And that's another important thing that we'll cover. That when you give zakat, being able to give zakat, number one, is a privilege. Why? Because it means you have some sort of wealth. And secondly, being able to give zakat to someone, that is a blessing for you. Because now you have discharged your responsibility as a Muslim. Imagine you were not able to give zakat. Imagine zakat was obligatory upon you. Imagine zakat was mandatory upon you. But you could not find anyone to give that zakat to. You have not fulfilled or discharged your responsibility of giving the zakat. So when you give the zakat, that person who's taking your zakat is doing you a favor, is helping you by discharging your responsibility as a Muslim. So when a person gives the zakat, it's not saying, here's the zakat money, you better come and mow my lawn or something like that, right? The zakat is only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zakat, when you give zakat, the person is doing you a favor by taking the zakat money. So that's the second part, there's a second meaning of zakat. That when a person gives zakat, وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا, their nafs, their soul is now purified. That love of wealth, that greed for wealth has now slowly diminished, just even by one level. Why? Because you've given something. You've somewhat suppressed your cravings for material wealth. Another beautiful meaning over here, the word zakat itself, scholars they mention that zakah, the verb zakah yazku, can mean to grow. In other words, when a person gives zakat, they will see that their wealth now grows. Allah will put barakah, Allah will put blessings in your wealth, and you will see that your wealth begins to grow. It's the exact opposite. You give and you're thinking, if I give, it's going to diminish. But what Allah is saying, you give and you'll see your wealth grow. And I'll just go off on a tangent over here. Something very, very interesting. You listen to so many of these books on business. There's a bunch of books on successful entrepreneurship and business leadership and whatnot. And there's a reoccurring theme that the more you give, the more you get. And they approach this from a very secular point of view. That if you help others, then eventually a time will come when a person wants to help you. And even from a psychological point of view, what they call the concept of giving back, or the concept of reciprocity. Where you give someone, right, you do someone a favor, automatically that person will feel obligated. Right? If the person is a decent person, they'll feel obligated that, this person just did me a favor. I have to help them out somehow. I have to return the favor. Even if you don't say, I'm doing you a favor, can you help me out? Right? So from a secular point of view, from a business point of view, people speak about this, and they speak very highly of it. In fact, as I was in my car today, I was listening to a podcast about he was actually the president of Yahoo, for the Yahoo website. Many of you have Yahoo email. You have it, right? So he was the president of Yahoo. And he wrote a book called Love is the Killer App. And they were doing an interview on him. They were saying, what do you mean by love is the killer app? He says, what that means is the more you love people, the more you give, the more you'll get. And he's talking about this from a very secular point of view. He's saying the more you help people, the more you help people get to where they want to be, opportunities will come before you. People will want to help you. People will present themselves before you. And we see it in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. We don't need, other examples to substantiate what Allah is saying. We believe in what Allah says because Allah says it. Everything else that comes about it will just increase our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But going back to it, sadaqah, zakah, when you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will definitely see that growth and increase in your wealth. And that's a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the different meanings of zakat and different purposes of zakat. Now getting into the legal definition. So we know, the concept of zakat, the benefits and the wisdoms of zakat, the objectives. What exactly is the legal definition of zakat? So zakat is a set amount which has been stipulated, ordained by our deen, by the Sharia, that must be given with the intention of ibadah. Right? So when you give zakat, you're not giving with the intention of saying you're going to return a favor. You give zakat with the intention of ibadah. From the wealth of a person and the ownership of this amount must be transferred to the eligible individuals. So this is the second part of zakat. Now the first part is there's a stipulated amount. Number one, you have to be eligible to give zakat. And that's why you mentioned that being able to give zakat is a privilege. Because if you are not eligible to give zakat, if it's the other way around, that you're eligible to receive zakat, then you're not in that great of a condition. If you're eligible to give zakat, that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with a good amount of wealth. Allah has blessed you with a certain amount of wealth that others may not have. So it's a privilege to give zakat. So that's the first part. The second part is it's a certain amount, right? Zakat is not some arbitrary amount where you feel like saying, oh, this year I feel like giving 10%, next year I want to give 1%, next year I want to give 0.5%. No, there's a specific amount that has been allocated by our deen for zakat. The third part of zakat is that it has to be given with the right intention. And the fourth part, which is very important, is that when you give zakat, it must be transferred under the ownership of someone who is eligible to receive zakat. Oftentimes, we give zakat to institutions, we give zakat to individuals that may not be eligible to receive zakat. And if that happens, then we have not discharged our responsibility of giving zakat. That's very important. If we give zakat to the wrong person, we have not fulfilled our responsibility of giving the zakat. So the fourth point, or the fourth condition of zakat being fulfilled is that it must be delivered. It must come under the ownership of the correct individual. And we'll get to the different types of people who are eligible for zakat, inshallah. Before we move on, we want to speak about what happens, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about a person who does not give zakat. Allah in the Quran says, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, inna kathiran min al-ahbari wal-ruhban la ya'kuluna amwal al-nasi bil-batil wa yasudduna an sabilillah. Allah is now in this first part of the ayah, Allah speaks about the Banu Israel, how their scholars and their leaders would deceive people and steal their wealth, and they would misguide them from the truth. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the same ayah, this ayah is in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. That those who hoard their gold and their silver, in other words their wealth, those who hoard their wealth, وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and they do not spend the necessary, the obligatory, the mandatory amount which they need to give. In other words, they do not give their zakat. فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Then give them this warning that there is a painful punishment waiting for them because they have not fulfilled their obligation of giving the zakat. Can all the brothers please move up, please? Jazakallah khair. So that is the warning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving in the Quran for those who do not fulfill their responsibility of giving the zakat. So we mentioned that Allah, whenever Allah speaks about praying the salah, Allah speaks about giving the zakat. Now on this end, we're hearing that those who disregard this command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who neglect their responsibility of giving the zakat, then there's a very painful punishment waiting for them. And then Allah gives more detail to that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ فَتُقْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُمْ وَظُهُورُهُمْ هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on that day, meaning on the day of judgment, يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ, that they will be, the fire of Jahannam will be kindled on them, right? Meaning the fire of Jahannam will be made very hot. فَتُقْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُمْ وَظُهُورُهُمْ. And their foreheads, their sides, their back, meaning their entire body will be in pain. Right? This is the punishment which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about for the person who loves their wealth more than they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they can't give a small percentage of their wealth which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them to begin with so that they can help others. Right? This is the punishment for a person who wants to neglect their responsibility, their obligation of looking after others, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has looked after that person. It's not something to be taken lightly. That, zakat, I'll give it when I feel like it. It's not a big deal. It is a very big deal. And for the people who say, zakat is not necessary or whatnot, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that there is a very severe punishment for those who don't fulfill their obligation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to give our zakat. Ameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is a blessing, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all make us eligible to give our zakat. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not make us from those who are in need of the zakat. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that when we give our zakat, we are humble. And that we appreciate the people we are giving zakat to. And that we understand that the people we give zakat to, they are actually helping us in fulfilling and discharging our responsibility as a Muslim. Ameen. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن المجيد ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات وذكر الحكيم أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات وبارك على محمد وأزواجه وذريته. قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام أرحم أمتي بأمتي أبو بكر وأشدهم في أمر الله تعالى عمر وأصدقهم حياء عثمان وأقضاهم علي وفاطمة سيدة نساء أهل الجنة والحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة وحمزة أسد الله وأسد رسوله رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. So continuing on with the topic of zakat, we now get into who is eligible or upon whom is zakat necessary. So there's a number of conditions. The first is that obviously you have to be a Muslim in order for zakat to be necessary on you. Right? Zakat is not necessary, it's not mandatory on people who are not Muslims. The second is that you have to be an adult in order to give zakat. Now, the word adult here is not in reference to our social understanding of an adult, meaning the person has to be either 18 or 21, whatever the case. Over here, adult means someone who has reached or passed the age of puberty, right? So if you have a child who has now reached puberty, then that child, right, so do you hear the irony, the paradox? The child is now considered an adult, right? In other words, that he has obligations towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third is that the person has to be in a sane state of mind. The person cannot be deranged or challenged mentally. And lastly, the last condition is that this person has to have the required amount of zakat. And we'll get to exactly what that amount is. It's known as the nisab. The nisab amount of the zakat, the quantum, the threshold. After you pass that threshold, you are now required to give your zakat. Furthermore, a few other points regarding zakat is that when you own the wealth, all of it has to be owned by you, right? You're not liable of giving zakat on money that you do not own, obviously, right? And zakat is on the money and the assets which exceed your personal needs. So obviously you have your clothing, you have your household furniture, you have your house and the cars and whatnot. You don't give zakat on any of these things. Unless you have, a fleet of cars that you use as business commodity, that's a different aspect. But whatever is for your own personal leisure, personal usage, that's not intended for business, you do not have to give zakat on that. So you can have a house that's worth $3 million. There's no zakat on that, right? But it would be good to give some sadaqah. And lastly is that for all this wealth that you have to have ownership of it for at least 1 year. What that means is for one entire year, let's say this person, let's just say this person's name is Ahmed. So Ahmed started working. And after 1 month of working, he received a salary, and now he is eligible to give zakat. Right? For the next 12 months, if Ahmed's assets or his bank statement or his net worth does not go under the limit of the nisab, right, he will be eligible to give zakat 1 year later. So I'll give you an example. Let's say Ahmed today has $1,000 and he is now eligible to give zakat. And let's say the nisab for giving zakat is $300, right? Just an example. So 2 months from now, he only has $500 in his bank account. 3 months from now, he only has $300, right? Which is the zakat amount. And then 12 months from now, when it's time to give his zakat, he now has $20,000 somehow, right? So the zakat will be given on the $20,000. As long as in between that 12 months, there is no single point wherein he was completely broke. He went bankrupt, he will have to give the zakat. Right, I hope everyone understands that, inshallah. So in order for a person to give zakat, is that they must have possession of their wealth for the entire 12 months, right? For one entire year. Not that exact amount, meaning from the start of the year till the end of the year, a point should not come where their asset, their net worth goes under the nisab amount. At any given time of the year, if they become eligible to give zakat, then the year restarts. Okay? So if any point during the year they become eligible to give zakat, then the year of holding the money restarts, right? Because you give zakat on your wealth every year, right? So these are a few points on who has to give zakat. And another point I'll mention is that you give zakat only on monetary wealth and business commodities. So obviously monetary is the money we have, the paper money, gold, silver, right? You give zakat on that. If you have animals that you use for business, maybe you're a farmer and you sell animals, you have to give zakat on that. Maybe you're a farmer and you have agriculture, you have to give zakat on that. Maybe you have rental properties, or you have cars that you use for business, you have to give zakat on that. So anything that you get a profit from, you have to give zakat on that, and also money. So inshallah with that, as we mentioned, that our intention is to go in as much as depth as possible, so that we do due diligence to the topic of zakat, because we really come across this once a year during the month of Ramadan. So inshallah we'll continue on with this. I think as of now we have a good understanding upon whom zakat is necessary, and the types of wealth upon which zakat needs to be given. Now speaking about gold and silver, other than gold and silver you do not have to give zakat on anything else. If you have imitation jewelry, if you have precious stones, if you have rubies, diamonds and all these things, even though they're very expensive, there's no zakat on these things, right? However, if you have a gold ring with a diamond on it, you give zakat on the gold, not on the diamond, right? And you would find out the value of that by taking it to a jeweler, right? So inshallah with that being said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to fulfill our obligation of giving zakat, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when giving our zakat grant us sincerity. Ameen. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه ولا تكفرون. The next announcement is Sadaqatul Fitr. So Sadaqatul Fitr is the money that we have to give towards the end of Ramadan, before the Eid, and this year the amount is $15, right? So for each household member in your family, whether that individual be just 2 days old, right? You may have a newborn baby, you still have to give Sadaqatul Fitr for that person. So it's $15 per person. If you have 5 members in your family, then 15 times 5, right? Jazakallah khair, aqim as-salah.